As I mentioned in a different lesson, you can isolate a region in a clip or an object in a clip, so you can do secondary color correction on that region or object by using the track matte key. The thing is, if the object moves or if the camera moves, then you run into a bit of a problem because the track matte key is static. So the workaround for that is to put that track matte key in motion to make it a traveling matte. Now, if you haven't viewed the video about the track matte key, I suggest you view that before you continue with this particular lesson. To see how the traveling matte works, go to Working Files and go to Premiere Pro Projects and go on down to Traveling Matte. Now, this is not an unusual setup here. We've got this interior shot, but we've got those bright windows. In fact, I kind of toned down the shot here so it'll be a little bit darker than I wanted just to make the windows a little bit less bright. But in fact, they are too bright. And the fix for this would be to put some track mattes there on the windows to tone them down a bit. Well, the problem is that we zoom here, so the track matte won't work because it'll be static. So we need to fix that by creating mattes and then putting those mattes in motion. So we could create 4 mattes here, one for that window, one for this one, and this one, and this one, which would be a little bit much for this lesson, but we will make 2 of them. We'll work on these 2 windows here. We'll put this one in motion and get this guy set up to put it in motion so we just see the process at work here. So the first order of business is to create mattes, and I want to make sure that my playhead is someplace where we are not zooming yet, where we're at this wide view there. All right, so I'm going to create a matte using the titler. So I go to Title, New Title, Default Still. I'm going to name this Window 1 since we're going to make 2 of these. I want to create a matte that covers that window down there. So I use the pen tool to do that. Click on the pen tool, and it's fairly easy here. A bunch of straight lines, so just click over here, another point over there, add a vertex down here, another vertex over here, and finish it off by hovering over the first one, getting that little O there down to the lower right-hand side of the pen tool and finishing that guy off. Now we have a closed Bezier. We want to turn that into a filled Bezier. So I go to Graphic Type, click the drop-down list and change to Filled Bezier. And we might want to just expand it a bit by dragging this guy up just a tad like that, I think, and maybe this first vertex up slightly like that. All right, that looks good. Now I could close this and start over again, but there's a little trick that you can use if you've got something set up that's going to look very much like the next title you want to make. You click on this T up here that says New Title based on Current Title, and name this one Window 2. Now I want to take this and move it up to there. So I take the Selection tool, move it up a bit, like so. But obviously it's not really lined up the way I want it to be lined up. So I'm going to click on the Pen tool, and that shows the 4 vertices there. And to see what I'm doing a little bit better, I'm going to drop the opacity over here down to something less than 100%. There we go. Now let's move those vertices a little bit around there, like right about there. You can come down here like that. I think you get the general sense of how this works here. That should about do it. It won't be perfect here. We're just trying to go through this relatively quickly so you get a sense of how it works. And then if you were doing this for money, you might want to spend a little bit more time on it, right? Let's put the opacity back to 100 and close this guy down. And now we have 2 titles. Go back to the project panel. There they are, Window 1 and Window 2. I want to use them as track mattes, and I need to put them on separate clips. Now you can't put more than 1 track matte key on a single clip, but in this case, we're creating 2 distinct and separate areas of transparency. So in this case, you can't put the 2 track matte keys on a single clip because they'll cancel each other out. So I need to apply these track mattes to 2 separate video clips. So I need to duplicate this clip twice. Hold down the Alt or the Option key, drag it up, there's once, drag it up again, there's twice. Let me pull down this divider bit so you can see the 2 mattes. Take Window 1, put it above that one, extend it a bit like that with the Trim tool. Window 2, same routine, trim it out like that. Now you can see those guys right there on the windows. What we need to do is put them in motion. But before we put them in motion, we need to adjust one thing, and that's the anchor point. Let me click on this first one there, go to its Effect Controls panel and click on Motion. And there is the anchor point there. You can barely see it, that little orange crosshair there, that little target. We want that target to be in the center of this graphic because when we scale it up or down or rotate it, we want to rotate it around the anchor point. Right now it's over here, so as we scale it up, it's going to pull away or push away from that anchor point. We want the anchor point to be in the center of that. It's a little tricky to put it there. You can't just drag the anchor point over. You got to use some numeric values to do that. So open this up. I want to essentially slide this to the left. I need to pull this to the right. So I'm going to take the anchor point, this number, the first one, that's the left to right. That's the X value. I'm going to go left on it. Go smaller, that moves the clip over to the right like that. Then I want to bring it down, so I drag the Y value down like that. All right, now we've got the anchor point, basically in the center, pretty close. Now I can put it back in the window. I'm not going to be too exact about this right now because I'm going to zoom in a bit here by changing this from fit to, let's say, about 50% or so. Pan across like that. Get a better look at the window there. Now we can adjust it a little bit more. Get it lined back up like that. It's not perfect, but let's just assume that it's perfect enough for our purposes. Now I need to set keyframes for the beginning of the zoom. So I want to go forward a bit here with the playhead to just the point where it begins to zoom, right about there. So just like the frame before the zoom begins, right there. That's where I put my keyframes in. So I've got this selected. I'm going to keyframe everything here. I'm going to open up scale by clicking off uniform scale. So I click position, scale height, width, and rotation in case we need to use rotation. All right, now we go forward a bit, like so. And clearly we need to move this guy now. So once I move it, it's going to add more keyframes here. It does it automatically. When you go to a different time and change some properties, it'll automatically add a keyframe. So I'm going to click on this, move it over like so. You can see we need to expand it a bit. So I'll expand its height, like that. Expand its width, like so. And maybe pull it down a bit by dragging this to the right a bit. There we go. Expanding the height a bit more, and maybe pull it to the right a bit. There we go, and expanding its width just a bit. I can't really see the top here. I'm going to turn off that upper graphic by clicking this visibility eyeball there, and now I can see it a little bit better. All right, now that's not perfect. You got a little gap there, but that's pretty close. We're going to put a blur on here as well. Let's do one more keyframe just to get the process kind of underway a little bit more. Change my view here so I can see more of the window. I want to move it again. So drag it over like this, right about there, and we want to expand some things again. So I got the height going again, and the width again. Maybe just the position slightly here. Should do pretty well, I think. Now, it's not perfect. Again, we got some problems here. We could adjust this with the rotation, what have you. But for our purposes, at least you see how this thing works. Now that we've done this, we need to apply the track matte key and a couple of other things. So let me just back off a bit here by going back to the fit view. Let's go get a track matte key. So go to Effects, Video Effects, Keying. I want to apply the track matte key to this window down there. We're going to put this one with that one there. So this window clip will go to window 1. Get my track matte key, double click on it to apply it to this clip. I also want to put the Luma curve on here as well. So I go to Color Correction, Luma curve, and double click on that. So now I've got 2 effects on there. I want to put a blur on this window up there, that graphic. So I go up there and I go up to Blur and Sharpen and double click on Gaussian Blur. Now I've got those 3 things going. All right, let's just make some adjustments now. So I go down to this one. I go to Effect Controls. I need to tell this effect where the track matte is, which is on video 4. I go to Matte on video 4. And now that opened up that window. Now to tell you that for sure you in fact are isolating that window, I can turn off the bottom clip, also turn off this one above it. And there we go, we've got that window now isolated. And as I go forward or backwards, you can see how we follow it. All right, we'll turn this guy back on again, just the bottom one there. Let's adjust the tonality. So I'll make this guy active again, and we'll make it darker by pulling down the midtones here a little bit. Maybe pull down the highlights as well. See how that works? Just a little bit there, just to kind of make our point here. You can see that it will follow it again. All right, let's just set up the one on top just to see how that works. I'm going to go to this one on top, make it visible again like so. I'm going to go to the beginning of the animation. The easiest way to do that is to go back to the one we've already animated. Click on that and navigate back to the first keyframe by going up there and clicking on that keyframe. And one more time. Now we're at the very beginning. So you have the playhead exactly at the beginning of this animation, which will be the beginning of that animation as well. So let's change to that particular graphic. And we'll put keyframes for that as well. So go over here. But we first need to set the anchor point again. So let's just do that. The anchor point is hovering right there. You can barely see it. So I'm going to move that over again by going left here first. And then going to the left over here to bring it down. I'll get the anchor point in the center of that clip. Now we can put it back in place in that window again. So that's the process there. We can zoom back in again and apply keyframes, but I just want to stay wide here for the time being. And we'll open things up, turn off uniform scale, keyframe position, scale height, scale width, rotation. And then we would go forward and do some more keyframes that way. A couple more things you can do now to make things consistent. I'm going to go back down to this first window that already has Luma Curve on it. I'm going to right-click on Luma Curve and say Copy. I'm going to apply the exact same Luma Curve properties to this other one by clicking on it, right-clicking here and saying Paste. So I need to apply a track matte key to this guy, so I'll go Effects, Track Matte, going down the ways here. There's the track matte, double-click on you. Back to Effect Controls and apply the track matte here to the proper clip, which is up on video 5. There's track matte, video 5. Turn that visibility back on, and there it is. And it has the proper Luma Curve setting on it as well. So it's equal in terms of luminance. And one more thing we want to do is apply a blur to the mats. So go to this first mat here, raise the blurriness just a little bit, not too much, just to get the edges blurred a bit there. If I turn off everything else so you can see that particular one getting a little bit blurry on the edges there. Now we'll copy that blur, right click on Gaussian blur, say copy, and go to this one up here and apply the same Gaussian blur to that one so it's also consistent, like so. Now we'll turn everybody back on again. Now we can move the playhead. See how that works. Now the window on top won't line up right, but the window on the bottom should line up reasonably well. Now the final thing to do is to brighten up this room a bit, which is just a bit dark. So go down here, go to Luma Curves over here, and apply Luma Curve to that clip. We'll go to Effect Controls, and we'll make it just a little bit brighter like that. Give you a little bit of contrast. Bring up the brightness a little bit there, and it won't affect the windows at all, even though they're already too bright, but we have the track mats on there, so it's not affecting them. We can then make the room a little bit brighter to compensate for the fact that we kind of underexposed it when I shot this. So turning a static track mat key into a traveling mat can really come in handy. You can use it to isolate a region in the clip that's moving because you're moving the camera, or isolate a moving object. And once you do that, you can apply secondary color correction to either the moving object or that moving area.